I think that high performers are seriously misunderstood people. I think that people think that high performers are these perfect, infallible employees. And the truth of the matter is, high performers often have some of the most critical growth areas that go unaddressed for years because they are good enough.
You're listening to HR Superstars, a podcast brought to you by 15 Fives. On this show, we talk to strategic people leaders who are making a meaningful impact in their organizations and shaping the future of work. So get ready to be inspired and discover the secrets behind building high-performing teams and fostering a culture of growth and thriving. The future of HR starts here. Hello and welcome to everyone. I'm Karina Young, our VP of People at 15 Five, and I'm so happy to have all of you here today. Today, we get to dig into a blind spot that is quietly costing companies much more than they realize. High performers who are burning out, checking out, or quietly walking out the door. In HR, we're all trained to spot the obvious risks: low performers, low engagement, high turnover. But a real threat to our companies is often more nuanced than it's the people who used to be all in, the ones who might still be hitting their goals but aren't raising their hand. They show up physically, but they're not lighting up. They're not contributing. They're not innovating in the way your business needs them to. And that's not a nice to have. It's necessary for the future of your orgs. These people are culture carriers. They're your future executives. They're often part of your succession planning or your change management. So when they start to disengage, it rarely sounds a loud alarm that we all hear until it's much, much too late. And when they leave, they don't just take their output or those deliverables, they truly take away momentum, morale, and institutional memory as they head out the door. So today we're going to talk about, how do you identify these people? How do you see early signals? How do you re-energize top talent in your org? And how do you ultimately create an environment where your best people want to stay and grow, so you're not constantly playing this cat and mouse touch-up? I'm super excited that we get to be joined today with Melanie Naranjo. She's the Chief People Officer at Ethena. Melanie has built cultures that support and retain top performers, and she's going to talk with us today about what support really looks like for top talents and challenge some of our ideas that maybe we've been holding on to for too long. I'd love to just get to know you a little bit more. Tell people, give us your elevator pitch of who you are, your journey in HR, and why this topic is important to you.
Sure. Hi, all. Very excited to be here with you all today talking about what I agree is a very, very important topic and one that I think about quite a bit. My name is Melanie Naranjo. I'm the Chief People Officer at Ethena. We're a compliance training company. We do everything from harassment prevention to cybersecurity, hotline and case management, all of it AI powered. And so, it's helped me build a people community, and it really encourages me to give back. And that's why I love participating in really key discussions like this, and I'm excited to dig in deep with you all today.
Awesome. Love that, Melanie. So glad to have you here. Yeah, we're big fans of Ethena and what y'all do over there. So let's start kind of at the beginning of this, which is just defining the problem, right? Who are high performers but low engaged people, right? When you think about these high performers, what are the patterns that you notice or that really stood out to you over your career?
Yeah, what's funny is I think that high performers are seriously misunderstood people. I think that people think that high performers are these perfect, infallible employees. And the truth of the matter is, high performers often have some of the most critical growth areas that go unaddressed for years because they are good enough. And what I mean by that is they're not causing problems, they're getting the job done, and therefore they're making the manager's life easier. But while that's going on, they are not learning things like how to prioritize, how to say no, how to surface critical issues, because they've been trained to be rewarded for not speaking up when there's a problem, not causing problems, just finding a way and figuring it out, whether it's efficient or not. And so I actually think that high performers are just really, really hard workers who get things done, not necessarily in the most efficient ways, not necessarily in the most strategic ways. They're just people that are removing blockers from their manager. And so I think understandably, they are often the first to be burnt out and often struggle when they get promoted into more strategic roles. That's sort of my definition of a high performer. Just really, really hard worker through brute force, cares a lot, gets the job done, but isn't necessarily as infallible as we think that they tend to be.
Yeah, well, that's so interesting because most of the people here all said the first thing that came to their mind when they heard high performers leaving was burnout. right? And oftentimes, like we all can even know from our experience, part of what leads us to burnout is those habits that probably got us really far early in our career, but we never learned to quite refine as we continue to grow and continue to get better because they are rewarded. It's like, great, you made less work for me, you made less hassle for your leader, you make my life much easier. So let's keep going, let's keep moving you ahead. Do you think then that those people are actually high performers? Is there like another segment of people we're totally missing out on who maybe have the right mix of skills and impact?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I certainly do think that there are people that get there and that I think that high performers, when you partner with them, will become true high performers. But if you're asking me the direct question, do I think high performers are like perfectly high performing? Listen, they're getting the job done, so I'm not going to knock them there. But I think they have meaningful growth opportunities that too many employers overlook as opportunities to engage, inspire, and really retain those employees. So yes, I do think they're high performers, but could they be doing better and could they be working smarter versus harder and making their own lives better as a result? Yes, also true.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard because if someone isn't stepping in, especially from the people function to coach leaders on how to actually grow those high performers well, and how do you actually target what's going on, it's very easy for all of these things to just exacerbate. And I'm curious too how you think about the assumptions of high performance and high engagement. How do you see those things correlating and connecting to one another?
This is a really interesting one because you and I talked about this early on, where I actually think that this is a common misconception that we sort of like force onto people. I'm going to start out and say the very blunt version of this, which is I don't necessarily think that you have to be obsessed with your job and love your work to be a high performer. And to be more explicit, I don't necessarily think that engagement in the way that people often define it is necessary and critical or essential for someone to be a high performer. As an example, we partner with many engineers who, listen, they're not passionate about coding. That's not what they dream about. They're passionate about rock climbing. They're passionate about their dogs. They're passionate about volunteer work, but this is their 9 to 5. And as long as from 9 to 5, they are giving me what we need for their work to be, meeting the standards of their performance, that should be fine. I actually find that companies who bend over backwards to try to make people really excited, to try to make people who want to go to the happy hours and be best friends with everyone across the team, I actually think that often tends to backfire. There are people who want to come into work and then leave at the end of the day, and they're not looking to make best friends at work. They're not looking to, schmooze everyone up at, the happy hour or the company holiday party or whatever the case may be. And so I actually do think it's very important to distinguish between the two and think about what motivates people to get their job done. For some people, it may be community building. For some people, it may be engagement in the traditional ways that we've defined it. And for some people, it might be how efficiently can I get my job done? How does this job empower me to then do the things that I actually care about outside of work? How can I do a job that doesn't drain me of energy and morale so much, that doesn't deplete me so much of energy that I have no happiness left to give to the rest of my life? And so I really do think it's a case by case basis of understanding what motivates each person at your company.
Yeah, I think that's such an important and really often misunderstood point, right? Engagement, just like performance or retention, isn't just a blanket thing to solve. It's not the same for everybody. And I don't think any of us want the same thing just replicated across hundreds or thousands of people in our company, right? We want people to be engaged in the way that matters to them, right? That's why we want our managers to spend the time understanding, like, Melanie, what's your specific motivation? What drives you? Why are you here? What really pushes you? What keeps you engaged? Because if you're engaged in the way that matters to you, which might look different from what it means to me, then you're going to be delivering that great work. And that's okay if it's like, hey, my motivation is to get out of work so I can work on my side hustle, so I can write that book I've been spending the last 5 years doing, or play this sport, or spend time with my family or friends. I think in many ways, we've really limited our view in the last few decades when it comes to the workforce of passion is work, life is work, and not really expanding that engagement actually is so much beyond that. And we do have a role to play as a workplace and work in it. But we don't have to be everything. We don't have to be number one to get great work from people.
think that's exactly right. And I think that change became more prevalent than ever and has continued to increase since the pandemic. I think this sounds dramatic to say, but I think COVID really forced people to sort of face the ephemerality of life and to think about, what are my actual life priorities and what do I want to be doing with it? How do I want to be spending my time? And many people realized it's not work. And the good news, by the way, for anyone who's hearing this and is feeling overwhelmed or thinking, well, then what is my job as a people leader? I actually think that there are ways to leverage this to our advantage and to build policies around this. I'll give like one very high level example just at a company level. And then I'm sure, Karina, that you will guide us in a direction that's more specific to managers. But from the people perspective, I think at the company level, you want to build policies that can be sort of choose your own adventure and that can be customizable by employee needs. One very specific example that we do at Ethena is we have what's called the $100 perk, because early on we started with the very traditional pizza parties, happy hours, so on and so forth. And we got the very common, exactly. And we got the very common and understandable, wow, that's not inclusive to me because, I don't eat dairy, or like, wow, I don't like those hours because, I have child pickup, or quite frankly, I don't want to go to this party and now I feel pressured to, and now I'm having less fun than if you just had not had the party in the first place. And so what we ended up doing was just saying, you know what, we are going to build agency here and autonomy. Every employee now is allowed to expense up to $100 per person per month towards engaging with work and bonding with each other as they see fit and if they want. If they don't want to, they don't have to. But if you and another person at the company decide, you know what I would really like to do? I've been trying to get a mani-pedi for the last month, but I've been too busy. Do you want to go at lunch and get one with me and we'll expense it to the company? Great, let's do it. The beauty of that is we've just built camaraderie. They planned everything. I didn't have to do anything. And of course, inevitably, right, they end up talking about work, or it builds that relationship so that now the next time, something rough happens, they have an assumption of good intent. So anyway, I say all that to say that I don't think that it should be demoralizing to come to terms with the fact that not everybody wants to engage with work in the ways that we're traditionally used to. I think we should use this as an opportunity to really explore more creatively what are new and innovative ways of keeping people motivated and driven to do the work that we need them to every day.
I think that's a super important point, Melanie. We get in that habit, right, of like just doing the things we've done before, the things we've done in other companies, the things that we see often online over repeated again and again, instead of saying like, well, what if we tried something new? Like, what would that benefit be to those people who we really care about retaining, and those things that we want to build that are hard to do, especially we know for people who might be here, like we are at 15/5, a fully remote company. Like, I don't have the benefit of like running to someone in the hallway. I've got to find different ways to connect with people that actually matter. And those people who are your high performers, giving them, to your point, the autonomy and the agency to say, this is how I want to actually spend my time. Like, if you actually consider me high performing, high impact, reward me with a little bit of that autonomy and agency. I think that's actually in many ways more valuable to them as a group than like, please arrive on Friday at 3 p.m. for this happy hour that like you're going to spend the whole time texting on your phone or doing something different. So I totally get it. And I'm curious for you, Melanie, in your experience, what have been like the earliest flags that you've seen in this group that they're starting to step away? They're starting to disengage or maybe be a little bit demotivated. What does it actually look like?
So I'm going to answer that in a roundabout way because I think it's a hard one to answer at face value. The reason being, high performers, in my opinion, have been conditioned to not cause problems and to make problems go away, which means, in my opinion, it's very hard to identify those signs. You have to proactively solicit information if you want to catch whether or not a high performer is starting to disengage or become demotivated or start thinking about leaving. Because guess what? They're not going to say it. They are not going to say it because that is not what they define as high performance. And that's not the persona that they have spent all this time building throughout their careers. So really what you have to do is actually start proactively asking questions. And they should be questions that target what I believe to be the top 3 triggers for high performers really considering leaving a company, getting demotivated, and disengaging. One is when they start to feel undervalued. I'm doing a lot of work. I'm working harder than anyone else, or I perceive that I'm working harder than anyone else, and it is not being valued. It's just being taken for granted because, of course, Melanie or Karina is going to take on the extra load. Of course, if somebody's going on parental leave, we're going to throw it over to Karina. Of course, if somebody is not doing their job well enough, instead of performance managing them, we're just going to have Karina do it for them, right? So one is not feeling valued. The second thing is feeling like they have lack of growth opportunities here. Hey, I'm doing all the work, but there's no promotion opportunity, or even without promotion opportunities, I'm not doing any new work. You're just giving me the same thing. And you as my manager are not doing the work to call out areas where I have reasonable and actual meaningful growth opportunities, like learning how to say no, learning how to prioritize, learning how to flag when there's an issue worth addressing. And the last one is just burnout, right? Burnout, which we all know what this looks like, but it really is just doing too much, never taking a break. And eventually you look up and you realize I'm miserable. I'm just miserable, so I'm going to start from scratch. And so really what you want to be doing as a manager, and to everybody who's experiencing this as an HR person, I just want to put out to you, you're an employee too. You should also surface if you are having these issues. We oftentimes forget that the HR team also needs to be taken care of and be thinking about their own burnout and performance and all of that. Really, managers should be asking questions like, hey, how often on an average week is your stress level at a 5 on a scale of 1 to 5? Hey, let's pause for a second. Let's talk through your workload. Which of the things on your plate right now is bringing in the lowest ROI, and why are you still doing it? Why are you still doing it if it's not bringing ROI? Or what is the biggest time suck on your plate right now? What would it look like to do that just 10% more efficiently? What would have to happen for this to take up just 10% less of your time? And what could you then do with that extra 10% that you freed up, right? All these things that will start to get people think, one, realizing that you care, because even though they haven't surfaced an issue, you are proactively checking in on them. I care about you. I want to make sure you're not burning out. I want to make sure you're getting as much as we are getting out of you as an employee. The thing I always tell people is I want to make sure that every day that you spend at this company is a day that you get something new that you can add to your resume. The minute that you stop getting new things that you can add to your resume, we have done you a disservice and you are no longer benefiting from us. And so these things will, one, indicate and signal to your direct report that you care, you are thinking about them, but two, it will start to surface those things that they otherwise wouldn't bring to you, because in their mind, they have told themselves and convinced themselves that speaking up, bringing you problems, is low performing attitude. That's low performing behavior. We want solutions, not problems, right? And so it's your job as a manager to alleviate that burden by asking those questions proactively and making it clear that this is not a problem. This is us partnering and strategizing together.
Yeah, Melanie, there's like 10,000 gems in what you just said. I don't even know where to begin, but I want to start with something you just said at the very end about, this like, we want solutions, not problems. And it makes me think about all the ways in which we write and design policies or agreements, or hey, this is how we work and how we operate, that actually might be in great disservice to our highest performers, right? That sometimes use these, very startup-y jargon and language of moving faster and being super agile and like just be a solver, take initiative, when we actually need people to slow down and have these conversations. Like, it's actually totally okay to raise a real problem, that you're having a blocker that you're facing. You're actually not supposed to figure everything out alone in your job. I mean, if you could do that, we wouldn't need managers. There's some companies that don't have that build totally different structures. But like, we all have to go through challenges and failures and obstacles to get better and grow. And so I think it's important even for us as leaders to think about, are we accidentally actually putting some of these barriers in the way of people and making it harder for them to speak up and say, hey, like, I actually need something from the organization?
A great flag, and definitely worth reminding people that this is something to talk about. And I personally like to redefine coming to the table with solutions as, it shouldn't be that you can't have a conversation with me until you've already solved everything. It should be, I want to see that you have made several attempts. And if you still are not able to solve it, then of course that's where I come in as your manager. That's my job, is to partner with you and help coach you and manage you. And sometimes I learn from you as well. What I'd love to see is us redefining, solution-oriented mindset from you have to come with the answer and the problem already solved to, hey, manager, here's a challenge I've been facing. Here are the 2 things that I've done. And unfortunately, it's not working. Can you help me poke holes in where I've gone wrong, or help me brainstorm what third magical option am I not considering? And from there, you can start to partner together. To me, that is totally solution-oriented mindset. I don't see a problem dweller there. I see a problem solver.
Just measuring employee performance is no longer enough. 15.5 helps your HR team take action to maximize performance. With 15.5's performance management platform, you can easily set up review cycles, collect ongoing performance data, track employee goals, and deploy customized campaigns that empower managers to drive growth. Learn more at 155.com or click the link in the show notes.
I had a report in a past company of mine who we had gone through a number of like just really high stress projects together. It was like back to back of like months of just really intense work. And there was no break between any of it. And we were getting to like this final stage of the project. And I remember this person came to me and was just like, I don't even know, like, I can't even start. I'm just like so mentally blocked and overwhelmed and burned out. Like I can't even begin to give you like the first two solutions. And instead of sitting there, which like honestly, like my instinct would be great, I have 5 solutions in my head, let me tell you, was to just give them the space to say, let's just like remove all those blockers from your mind. Tell me what's causing you stress. The exact same things you were saying earlier. What's making you inefficient? What do you think we could do that would make you 10%, give you 10% extra time in the day? What's your biggest energy suck? Where do you miss spending time? And even in conversations like that, gave that team member of mine the space to leave and be like, okay, now I can go and do this. Like, I didn't need you to give me the solutions. I just needed you to help me clear what was stalling me from getting ahead. And again, I just think it's just about being creative in those moments of like, we really care about our people. We know who our high performers are. If they're asking you for something, find a way to help them and coach them through it to get to that next stage.
I do really love that point that you made around what are the things that you love and how do we get you back to some of that? Because one of the things I don't think we think about enough is the difference between energy draining and energizing work, because you can be doing the same number of hours of work, but if it's all draining work, that is so much more emotionally taxing than 8 hours of work that you love and are energized by. And I think sometimes that for a high performer can be hard to acknowledge as well. Like, oh, it's not that I'm working till 2 a.m. every day, but somehow I feel drained. I don't know why. And so just to sort of create those terms and create the space to discuss that and acknowledge, yep, this is draining work. So how do we make this less draining? How do we use AI to automate some of that work so that it's not taking up as much of your time? And now you have more time to do the work that is energizing you and you walk away feeling like you want to do even more.
Exactly. And even coming back to what you were saying earlier about what actually matters to your highest performing employees, what is it that they're looking for? If the thing that actually brings them the most energy, allows them to come to work with energy and excitement is like what they do outside of work. Hey, I realize, Melanie, like in the last 3 weeks, I've spent like no time working out. I've totally skipped my morning routine because I've been on all these early meetings and I'm really feeling it. Like, I just don't feel like myself. It's like, great. Like, how do I get you that time back? What can we do together to collaborate and do that so that you can still show up here and do the work that's needed? And just think about them as a whole unique person that has a unique set of needs that your job is to figure out and find out what are the different levers that you can pull. I'm curious, when you talk about, taking this proactive approach to figuring out these signals and actually seeing them, how much of that is the relationships that you build with people, the one-on-one versus data, and using actually numbers to maybe try to find some of these hot spots that need your attention?
Not sure everyone will agree with me, but I think that high level data like an engagement survey, I think these are good indicators of company-wide trends, but I don't find that these are going to be the things that help you with each individual high performer, because as we said early on, each individual high performer has unique needs and unique things that motivate them. And so if we try to find a one size fits all, it's doomed to fail, in my opinion. Yes, the engagement survey is going to help me understand if we have widespread trends. It's also going to help identify if there are problematic trends, right? If all the people who are struggling the most are of one particular demographic, that's really concerning and we need to address that. But in terms of individual high performers, the best approach is one-on-one relationship building, and that manager proactively surfacing those issues through questions, but also role modeling and showing what is okay behavior, what is expected behavior, and spotlighting when somebody else did a great job of surfacing an issue to them that they were then able to and happy to, as a manager, partner with them. It's also putting your money where your mouth is, quite frankly. If you as a manager, all you do is complain about your underperformers to your high performers, what message are you sending to your high performers? They don't want to be the person that you complain about, right? And also, the message they're getting is you're not going to actually do anything about it. You're not actually going to hold them accountable because your high performer, I'm the one that's going to solve this problem for you, right? And so it's really about all the message signaling that you are doing, whether consciously or subconsciously, all the role modeling that you are doing, all the questions that you are asking. That is what's going to make the difference for your high performer. I really can't emphasize this enough. I know we're talking about high performers, but I really do think this goes hands in hand. You cannot retain high performers if you do not manage underperformers. If you do not manage your underperformers, I promise you, the person who's then going to have to deal with it is your high performer. They're the ones that are going to have to carry the load. They're the ones that are going to see, why am I getting paid the same amount of money as somebody else for doing much higher quality work? So if you want to retain your high performers, you have to take a good hard look at how you're performance managing across the company. And what I am not saying is spend all your time on your underperformers. What I am saying is that while you are doing the work of investing in your high performers, you also need to do the work of holding your underperformers accountable.
Why do you think that's so hard? Like, why do you think that tension is constantly there? Like, we want to spend our time on our high performers, but it feels like in many organizations, like we do have this group of low performers, underperformers that just never quite gets fully solved.
I think the most blunt version of this is people don't like being the bad guy, or to be gender neutral, the bad person. People don't want to be that person. And so it's just easier to ignore it. I don't want to face this confrontation. So they allow this underperformance to go on unaddressed. And hey, the high performer is going to take care of it anyway, so why bother? What a company needs in order to be able to manage this is clear performance standards and clear, very specific ways to track these and address them very quickly. And I'll give some specific examples so that people actually have something to move forward with from here. One of the things that we do at Ethena that has worked quite well for us is we do mandatory feedback sessions between managers and direct reports that alternate with their one-on-ones. So if you think about a weekly one-on-one, 1 week you have a one-on-one, 1 week you have a session that's just dedicated to feedback, and we color code the feedback. Yellow means nice to have. Orange means if you don't do this, fine, you're not going to get fired, but you won't be eligible for an increase or promotion. And red means danger. If you don't act on this meaningfully and sufficiently, you will lose your job. Another thing that we do is every quarter we have a performance pulse check where we ask 3 questions. All managers have to meet with their managers, so the skip level, and they have to answer 3 questions. 1, if this person were to quit today, how would I feel? Panicked or relieved? 2, is this person ultimately making my job easier or harder? And 3, if I could replace this person today with the snap of my fingers with somebody else in mind, would I do so? And if the answer is yes, it doesn't mean that we're immediately going to fire someone, but it does mean that person has approximately 60 to 90 days to either become a yes to all those answers, like a positive, or they will no longer be at this company. And I don't say that from a place of lack of empathy. I say that from a place of honesty and transparency. And it is important that you hold managers accountable to these standards. It is important that you be loud about these processes and performance metrics to your employees so that they themselves can understand, oh, I'm in the red. This is important. I have 2 to 3 months to turn this around if I personally would like to keep this job, right? And so again, it's not about being nice or being not nice. It's about being clear about what it takes to be effective as a company, because I can't just think about you. I have to think about the good of the entire team and the entire company. And so if you want to be on this journey with me, this is the contract. This is the agreement that we have to have. Where I think companies go wrong, to answer your question more directly, is these things are not transparent. And no one actually holds anyone accountable, including the managers, to these standards. And there are no milestones or stopgaps in place to make sure that these are not going on and on and on. Whereas if you put in a quarterly pulse check where you have to check in every quarter, and if this person has not turned it around by that next quarter, then you as the manager now have a performance issue, and we're going to deal with that. So I think that is where that tension comes into play, that there's no accountability, there's no structure, and there's no transparency.
Well, yeah, if you're only doing a performance check-in once a year, you've got 12 months for everything to go off the rails, and nobody's holding anyone accountable. And I think to your point on manager accountability, that is so often what I find, like that missing step, which is, we told you that if you answer no to these questions, you have 60 to 90 days. Now we're at the 90-day mark. It's actually no longer their performance problem. It's yours as a leader if you're going to let this continue. We don't do that. Like, not only do we not want to be like the bad person to the employee who's underperforming, but we also don't want to be that to the manager. And if you're not going to hold anyone accountable, then just make that clear agreement in the company. That's just not what we're going to do. But if you're trying to have a high performing organization, you're investing in the right people, you're moving people out who aren't contributing to the org, who aren't meeting your expectations, you have to be clear and kind and transparent and consistent. Like that is just the bottom line.
I think that's exactly right. One of the things that I do think is key here and where people go wrong is they'll hear this. Yes, it's accountability. Yes, why aren't managers doing their job? And the solutions that they come to the table with are, okay, let's provide an overly complicated performance review process. Let's, write this 10-page handbook that all managers are going to be required to read and sign off on. And let's offer this 10-hour training. And I personally don't think that's the solution because your managers are not going to do all that. They're not going to read it. They're not going to be paying attention. They're not going to remember it. It's too much. And so that's why if you'll notice, anytime I am providing like, hey, here's what you need to do, it's short, it's memorable, it's quick, right? Our performance pulse check is 3 questions. How would you feel if they quit? Are they making your job easier? Would you replace them if you could? That's it, right? Managers really understanding the underlying issue, right? Managers don't have a lot of time. Managers don't like having tough conversations and saying the tough thing. They sugarcoat, right? That's why color coding is helpful. Instead of saying, hey, your job is at risk, because they'll never say that, even when you say, are they going to be surprised if we fire them? Well, I think so. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure. Always, right?
If you have to ask that question, they will be surprised.
Do you know what's a lot easier to say is, hey, I'm sorry, but this is a red. This is a red. And by the way, if you make it common enough language, which we have at Ethena, if your manager starts to dance around it, guess what? Your direct reports are now empowered to more effectively manage up. Hey, you're making me a little bit nervous and I'm unclear. Is this an orange or is this a red? Now you can't get out of it, right? So now it's very clear. This is a red. We have a performance issue. You've got 90 days to turn it around. So my recommendation to everyone is, yes, we need to hold managers accountable. And also, if you do it through brute force without understanding the underlying issues, that in and of itself is not going to be effective. You need to understand the underlying issues that managers are facing. You need to meet them halfway, and you need to make it easy for them to do the job that you are asking them to do.
Yeah, I love it. So let's think about this in terms of the high performer then. What are some of the things that you want to see or you coach your leaders to do in the organizations to start closing the gap, right? Someone is being disengaged. We've got to re-engage them. We need to do something. What actually works?
So you start with the questions, right? You pulse check to check, are they motivated? Are they energized? Is there something they're excited about? Do they see themselves here in another 1 to 2 years? Once you've identified those issues, you really do have to come up with a custom approach. So I'll give a specific example because I wouldn't want to give something too vague that doesn't apply to everyone. So let's look at a specific example of someone who is disengaged because, quite frankly, I just don't feel like I'm growing anymore. I feel like all I'm doing is like taking on all these different eggs in a basket, but I'm not actually getting better at my job. I feel like if I quit today or if I quit in 5 months, there's nothing I've added to my resume. That's big. I want to make sure you're growing. Where do you want to grow? In your ideal world, what's the next title you want to have? If you were to quit today and start interviewing, what title do you want? And then, okay, cool. What skills would you need to get that title? Great. I'm going to spend the next 6 months partnering with you on getting you the skills that it would take for you to get that job, so that whether you stay with us or you leave for another company, you are now equipped to get that title. And I know that can sound scary and counterintuitive, right? Like, wait, you're preparing them to leave the company? No, you're not preparing them to leave the company. You are giving them the skills that are going to want to make them stay at the company because they are getting something out of it. Because once they get those skills, they will be able to trust that when they come back to you and say, I want to do more things, great, I will partner with you on how to make that happen. Oh, I don't have that specific skill set myself. No problem. I have a network. I'll connect you with so-and-so, right? You want to make sure that you are providing value to them. If somebody comes to you and says, I'm burnt out. I'm working till 2 o'clock every morning. I don't have time to work out. I barely have time to walk my dog. This is miserable. Okay, cool. Let's talk about your time sucks. What can we delegate? What can you deprioritize? What should you be doing in half the time? And I don't know why you've been taking so much time on it. Let's figure that out together, right? Which things have you been saying yes to that you should not be saying yes to? Which problems that other people have been having that you've been working around instead of surfacing them as meaningful performance issues that I, as your manager, need to be made aware of so that we can address them, so that you don't have to keep fixing other people's mistakes, right? So it's really all about asking the question, identifying the underlying issue, and then partnering with them on the solution.
I think that's so great and such practical advice. And when I think about that question that you said of like, okay, well, like these are the skills and whether you stay here or not, we're going to build them together. What you're really doing there is actually creating a much deeper trust and transparency with your direct reports, right? Which is something they're going to think about if they do hit that 6-month mark and they're like, man, I see this VP role in another company, maybe that's what I want. They might stop and wonder, yeah, but what if like I don't have another boss like Melanie? What if I don't have someone who's invested in my future? Maybe I should just like stick around and see where this goes. If you can, I think, even put those questions in their mind of like, hey, you're getting a value here that's beyond the job description, just the compensation, which again, that might totally be the number one motivating factor to someone. We don't know, it's individual and that's okay. But if I can just start to kind of sprinkle in there, like you're getting more here than just what you're going to put on your LinkedIn profile in the future. You're actually getting true development, true one-on-one, targeted, personalized growth through me. That is really, really hard to find and to replicate.
Exactly right. And also, I will just say the tough thing. What is the alternative? The alternative is, oh, I don't want them to leave, so I'm never going to equip them with those skills. Guess what? They're going to quit anyway. In fact, they're probably going to quit sooner. If they want to leave because they want this title and you can't give it to them, they're going to leave regardless of what you do. And so making their life miserable while they're here and not helping them is not going to help you at all. At least partnering with them, to your point, develops that relationship, makes it much more likely that they'll want to stay, that they won't be able to get another manager like you, because managers really do make such an impactful, a meaningful difference in an employee's day-to-day experience. So lean in, because the alternative, I promise you, is not better.
Yeah, exactly. Ignoring the problem is not going to make it go away. What do you do when you have a high performer who's also a bit of a jerk? Like someone who is not a culture contributor, maybe a bit of a detractor, creates a negative environment for others. How do you balance that out? And are they actually high performers?
Yeah, so there's two avenues. I'll answer your direct question, which is no. Very bluntly and directly, a high performer who is miserable to work with and makes everyone else do bad at their job is not a high performer. And if you don't believe me on that, I will say just strategically, what do you do when you've built an entire company culture around one person and they quit? Now you're screwed, right? Because you've demoralized the rest of the team. You've put all your eggs in one basket. It is strategically inefficient to tolerate bad behavior from a quote unquote high performer. It does not make sense from a business perspective. I say that because I think that is key for anyone who's talking to their CEO or leadership team who's trying to advocate, and you come and say, well, but they made so-and-so cry. Your leadership team doesn't care that they made so-and-so cry. The leadership team cares on the impact to business. And the impact to business is, hey, think about how many other people quit that we lost their value and we lost this much time having to replace them. And when they quit, now we're screwed. Right? Those are the things that your leadership team cares about. And so I encourage you. I agree with you. It is terrible that they made so-and-so cry. And also that's not the winning argument. But with that said, there's two avenues here. For a high performer who's, let's just call them what they are, a jerk to work with. First, assume good intent. I really do believe that's critical, because sometimes they actually just do not understand the impact of their behavior, and to call it out and explain why this is bad can make all the difference. They might genuinely say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. Thank you for calling that out. A true high performer values feedback, and they want to learn, they want to grow, and they will appreciate the feedback, and they will adjust their behavior. I've worked with several people like this, and they really do try, and they really do turn it around. So assume good intent. Now, if you assume good intent and you give the feedback and still it doesn't change, then at the end of the day, that to me is a performance issue, and you have to treat it as such. Hey, you do a phenomenal job of closing deals. Can't fault you there. Really amazing. And also, you have cost us so much money in lawsuits, in other people quitting, in other people not surfacing issues because they were trying so hard to work around you because you did not listen to X, Y, and Z. This is not going to be tolerated anymore. I would love to keep partnering with you, but unfortunately, we can't if you can't meet us halfway. Here are the changes I need to see. And if they don't change, unfortunately, you will have to part ways at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that, again, what you said earlier. It's just coming back with transparency, clarity, and accountability. Like, bottom line is, we don't tolerate it. And I know sometimes it's easier said than done. Sometimes we're in organizations that say, well, why don't we tolerate it? Actually, this person's so worth it. But to come back to, again, what you said, like, what is your winning argument? Your winning argument is they made someone cry, even though that might be very real and very harmful to that person. It is this bigger business impact. Melanie, as we wrap up, I would love for you to just share, what is the one thing you want people to do differently with their high performers walking away from today? And if they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
The one thing truly would be, take a good hard look at your high performer and think about where they have room to grow. Like, truly, not, well, but they're getting the job done. Like, genuinely, it is such a disservice to your high performers to not help partner with them on helping them get more efficient, being able to prioritize better, surfacing issues, because those things are making their life miserable, I promise you. And those things are going to hold them back when they finally do enter a leadership role. And so what can you do to meaningfully help them make their own lives better, and your life too, but their lives better? And so just start by asking a question. You can literally say, hey, I came off this webinar and I realized I haven't been proactively checking in with you. 1 to 5, how motivated are you every day? How often are you hitting a 5 on the stress scale? Let's talk about that. Why is that happening so frequently? How do we bring that frequency down? What would it take to make you less stressed on a day-to-day basis? How can I be a better manager to you? Just lead with curiosity and ask these questions, and ask them, please, like, by God, ask them in a way that does not give them an out. If you say, are you happy? Are you stressed? Are you doing okay? I promise you they are going to say everything's fine, right? Or it's stressful, but I got this. Do not ask them a yes/no question. Ask them a scale-based question on a scale of 1 to 5, or ask them a question that requires an answer. What is the most time-consuming thing on your plate? Now let's talk about how we get that off your plate or reduce the time that it is taking. Just be very thoughtful in the way that you ask these questions so that you actually get a response, a meaningful response that you can partner with them on.
My go-to question is always like a 10%. What would you do that would make you 10% happier in your job? What could I do 10% better as your leader? It's that little tiny window that opens the door. And I think we will all be surprised at what we find behind it. Melanie, thank you so much again for your insight and your expertise. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join here today. If you want to learn more about how we approach this at 15.5, come find me and some of my 15.5 friends at SHRM at the end of the month. We'll be there. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Melanie's out there on LinkedIn, always sharing tons of great advice. Thanks all. Have a great day.
Thanks all.
Struggling with churn of your top performing employees? Reducing employee turnover can't happen overnight, but properly designed employee experiences can predict and prevent turnover and ensure your top performers stay at your organization and contribute to its ability to thrive. If you want to learn more, check out 15.5's ebook, The HR Leader's Guide to Reducing Regrettable Turnover. You'll learn the different types of turnover, how to define regrettable turnover and what drives it, and how to keep your top performers around longer. The link is in the show notes.